That's
Session.
setup.
Yes, that is a lot.
They pay you $15.
My sister got to be on front.
doing it.
It was a priest that lived to run it on.
You
Switch
have
from
to
Sherwood
do it.
County. Girls, kind of interesting.
Rochester.
Okay, we are streaming, so I'm going to call the Town of Rochester Town Board May workshop meeting to order. If you could all stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you do the roll call?
Councilwoman Alba? Here. Councilman Coleman?
Here.
Councilwoman Smeeseth is here. Councilman Nguyen?
Yep.
Supervisor Allen?
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is the acceptance of the agenda. I'd like to make a motion that the town board accepts the agenda as prepared by the town supervisor with the addition of a discussion on using time for town employees.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. I'm just making a note so I don't forget. Okay. So we, at our workshop meeting, at the top of the meeting, we have public comment. So any members of the public that would like to attend and comment in person or virtually can do so at this time during our meeting. We request that persons speaking to the board address remarks to the board and not other members of the audience in the form of a debate. We do not respond to questions or comments made in a back and forth during the public comment section. However, any board member can respond should they wish during board member time, which is the next item on our agenda. So with that, is there anyone here who would like to address the board? Barbara.
I always have a tendency to write it out. So I can- My aim is here to address the board today is to bring to attention of a situation that will pose a danger to the residents in downtown Atwood. There is presently an application before the planning board called Maida Lakes, proposed 10-lot subdivision at 481 Metacons Road, formerly the Mooney Indoctrination Camp. And how I got that is I went to property description report for 481 Metacons Road. So I went to documentation. The Mooney sold this property of 666 acres for $125,000. It was then resold to Stone Creek Manor LLC for $440,000. This July, in 2024, a couple from Brooklyn paid $2.8 million. It is properly assessed at $448,000. The full market value is $772,000, but yet they couldn't say $2.8 million. The couple from Brooklyn inherited a property they thought was ready for subdivision and soon found out they inherited problems that due to lack of code enforcement for 20 years and previous 15, because that's how long I've been here, we basically had no one checking on anything. In fact, due to the new code, this project will require them to do a complete hydrogeological study, which was started on May 6th. If they passed, I don't know. But they have been working in there every day since, doing what? With whose permission? In fact, over the past 3 years, I reported activity going on by that previous owner to code enforcement, and nothing was done. They clear cut trees, had a temporary building to house their big trucks, which was very visible to the road. And the existing camp was illegally buried. The entire camp of buildings, oil tanks, piping, asbestos were buried instead of being demolished and taken off site. This piece of property now has sat vacant for 20 years. Steve, in fact, even though he says I'm not getting involved, on November 22nd of 2024, he wrote a letter to Rick Jones stating This is the history. 2002, the Meadow Lake site, an existing multi-building site locally called the Mooney Camp, was demolished without permit and legally buried in the field. We viewed it. All along the right side of the entrance of the roadway. The site was listed for years in the New York City DEC Environmental Bulletin as a toxic site. The demolition and burial was deemed an environmental crime by investigating DEC officer. A video was taken of the burial, which served as evidence. A burial material that still remains buried. And unfortunately, checking with the DEC, anything prior to digital is gone out of the records. For the past 2 years, my wife informed the CEO several times of activity taking place without a permit, including clear cutting of trees down to the lake, putting in a longer road, paving a large area in close proximity to that lake, placement of a structure housing all their equipment, accessory use without principal use without a permit. The CEO failed to investigate. All of these actions were taken in further and subdividing the land in violation of our zoning subdivision code. The lake repair claimed by the applicant would have to be guided by the New York State DEC. Applicant should have documentation and proof of legality of the work on the dam and the lake. And he talks about the water issue. However, Mendebach had been already surveying lots, and he said it's not disallowed, but it shows that the applicant is moving ahead of the law. So they were very well informed. It was a problem 20 years ago. So they created that lake. So on this piece of property, previous camp illegally created a lake. And how I know, because I did my work. This documentation came from Bruce Schoolmaker's basement from his son. Of all the way back to the 70s. Of all the documentation of what happened, how that lake was created illegally. And the town did nothing. It was a problem 20 years ago. And hurricanes over the years made the erosion of the land between the edge of the lake and the stream smaller. A neighbor said it's evident on Google Earth over the years that the lake is going to collapse. Its town board member Helena Duda, a DEC affiliate, stated at a meeting after viewing the situation just recently, "You're going to lose the lake. If the lake collapses, there is an impending danger to all the residents downstream, even extending," that's a huge lake, "into downtown Akron." After attending meetings on this proposal since I've been involved since November and making correspondences since November 24, I brought the burial issue, documentation provided, and the dangerous lake situation to the attention of the town board and the applicant and the town board attorney. And the correspondence with Chair Rick Jones states it's a DEC issue. After meeting Chairman Rick Jones, he stated he confirmed with other members of the town board and the attorney and stated the lake issue is not their issue on this application. Well, at that meeting, I jumped up and flew out of here so fast that I went back and sent this email. I had to leave the meeting as I was so disgusted with the ignorance and the nonchalant lack of feeling of responsibility by these town officials and attorney to the danger that lake poses to the residents in downtown Akron. It is obvious to me that no one in power or authority was going to do anything, so I knew that someone had to. So I contacted the DEC at the phone number, who I talked to an officer who led me to Ecosystem Health, phone that twice, and didn't receive anything back. And they can go on Google Earth and see over the years the erosion if they wanted to. So I contacted the DEC by phone. So my next step was to write a letter then to the DEC or the town board, to copy the town board of the plan board. And then Steve said to me, "Why don't you ask the town board to write a letter to the DC that this situation has come to their attention and you would like it investigated? Possibly contact the owner, who on this, there was no owner listed, so luckily the assessor's assistant filled that in for me. So that I said, if the DEC wants to contact somebody, now we know the address in Brooklyn, New York. So it's Meadow Lakes LLC, this is the address. And then I also have the address and the tax map ID number. So basically, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking the town board to get on this because it doesn't seem like anybody's going to, and that lake is going to collapse. And when it does, there's going to be hell to pay. Let's just say that. So I don't need a response, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. And if the town board decides not to do anything, then I guess I will write a letter to the DEC myself, copying you, the planning board, and unfortunately go public in the paper.
Do you have copies to share with us tonight or? could we
No,
get-
that, you want to see, I'm not a typer.
Okay, so,
So if you would
Okay,
like
well-
me to write that up officially and submit it to you, I can. do
Okay,
that.
great. Thank you.
I can do that, and I can provide you with like all this information of who owns it, da, da, da. Like I said, they're in there now every single day, the gate's been open. And in the old days, that was my stomping ground for all my municipal earth, so I know that land very well. But it has no trespassing signs up there now, and I'm not going to violate and go in there and check for myself with what's going on. But Bell Lake is a concern. I mentioned it to a couple neighbors who I saw this week, and they said, that was a problem 20 years ago, and they didn't do anything. And when I left, the TV just said it's gonna be the worst hurricane season this year. It's scary when you see the amount of land that is eroded between that boodle hole and the edge of that lake. It's getting skinnier, skinnier, it's getting the erosion. So did the DEC take me up on it? And that's what all the activities going on in there, that the DEC did get it? I have no idea, because I find it difficult with no planning board minutes. They don't seem to be up to date, planning board minutes. So for me to find any information on what's happening, or even on the computer, I've got to the calendar, but I don't see agendas until like a day before the meeting. So like I said, I'm at a loss for information on that project. I know there's a meeting Monday of the planning board, but is it on the agenda? I don't know. I know they set a public hearing for June.
will you guys allow me to, just clarify, the planning board meeting next week is on Wednesday.
Oh, because I thought the calendar on the computer showed Tuesday.
It's on Wednesday.
Okay,
But that might be the case because someone else called about that.
I fixed it.
Oh.
Christina let me know that
Okay.
the calendar. Yeah, so
Now,
I just wanted to,
last-
for the record,
last planning board meeting was canceled for 12.
Yeah.
Right, with no explanation as to why. I guess I'll find out. So it's going to be, isn't it usually the Mondays? for the meeting?
it's Memorial Day on Monday.
Oh, because of the month, but normally it will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Is there anyone else here who'd like to address the board? Ken?
Sure, Ken Stevens, I just wanted to say briefly that we had the two community forums, I think, at different times, 3 of you were there. We got some good input, some thoughtful comments, and I'm here tonight just to urge the board to move forward on a community housing fund with the notion that it should be done as expeditiously as possible, recognizing that there are some pieces of it that need to happen in Albany to get a home rule law passed. And, you know, I'm here tonight basically, if anybody has questions, to respond to them. I know this is not the time for that, but it's not such a simple issue. I appreciate that. And it's not proffered by the housing committee as a solution for everything. I mean, in our estimates that we provided, we thought a 1% rate would generate approximately $200,000 on an annualized basis. So obviously, that's not enough money to solve a housing crisis in this town or anywhere, but it's a significant first step. And the notion is it could be used, as it has in other communities, to leverage additional funds and to be used with layering of other incentives, perhaps, such as flexible zoning, where you see a project that a little bit of support from the town could make a difference in both attracting development and attracting the interest of state and other public funders. So that's it.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board?
I think I have a message on Zoom,
That the participant did not want to address the board, but just want to make sure that no one on Zoom wants to address the board. Okay, so we will move on from the public comment portion of the meeting, so now it's town board member time. Would any board member like to bring anything up or address anything that came up in the comments?
I don't want to address the comments, but I just want to say, because I haven't been at the last two meetings, just thank you to anyone who attended the the housing forums that we had. And helped us talk about solutions, problems, and everything to do with housing, and thank you to the housing committee for doing that. And also that the rec department has been doing a lovely job in their spring fling with really great successful luncheons. So just thank you to them and everyone involved with that, and apologies for not.
Thanks, Sharon. Anyone else?
And I would just like to thank everybody that wrote in letters in support of the Funding Futures grant application, which goes out tomorrow. So fingers crossed. Thank you, everybody in the community. Thank you.
I wanted to address a couple things, just technical. There is, because of the staffing gaps that we had, the planning board minutes are behind. However, I think once any draft is the official minutes until they're approved, so I'll check in with them about getting something posted. The agendas are located on the planning board board page. So I can try to make that more clear from the calendar page where the agendas can be accessed, but they're usually up about a week in advance. And we also have an e-notify that people can sign up for, that they get an email alert every time an agenda or the minutes are posted. So I can do that and also just keep reiterating that that is a great feature that we have to keep everyone informed. Okay, so if there's no other board members who have anything to share, we'll move on to approval of and payment of abstract 5B. So I would like to make the motion that the Town of Rochester Town Board approves and authorizes payment of abstract 5B 2025 in the following amounts. General fund, $101,425.27. Highway fund, $29,148.70. Capital fund, $23,838.18. Street lighting fund, $366.38. Ambulance fund, 0. And escrow, which is part of general fund, is $4,470.60. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. I need to actually table the appointments. We can discuss in executive session, but I'm going to table those for now. So we're moving on to the municipal park bathroom change order. I circulated items earlier in the week, and then today I went ahead and printed out the new documents that we had received. So the first is a resolution, but we shouldn't look at that. I want to just discuss the change order request. And oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to print the map, but I can pull that up on my computer. Oh, amazing. Thank you, Charlotte. So, in the bid responses, the bidder that we selected had put a note about the catch basin, but it wasn't part of the proposal because we didn't request that. And I think it wasn't something that we addressed when we approved the bid. So when we started moving forward with the contract, they were curious if they could move it slightly because the catch basin that's down by the road would have to be moved to keep it in the location it was. So then we did some site visits, we engaged with our engineer, and then also the recreation department, and sort of came up with the proposed change order from the approved bid to move the bathroom up onto the hill, which last year initially was the proposed location. So the reason for this is, number one, the catch basin would need to be moved. There is also, it is also possible that there'd have to be culvert install because of the way the water moves. And the recreation department had already kind of come to me about that location, saying that it's oftentimes like a pond, even though there is a catch basin there. And we're concerned about just the area around. The bathroom was gonna be elevated, but then it around it would not be as much, so. But then also it was pointed out that during programming, when they're standing at the pavilion, which is where they congregate, you can't see the pickup and drop off with the location of the bathroom. So, those things combined, plus we would be removing the pump, because I don't know if the board remembers, but the location that was proposed is below the septic and leach field, so we had to install a pump in order to have the septic operate. And in the new location, it's gravity, so the bathroom is above the septic and leach field. So the recreation department wrote in a letter requesting this change. The engineer approved this preliminarily and said that the Department of Health approval is actually on the plans for what the system we would need. And the contractor, is just thought that we might prefer this. So, the two options are that I wanted to review with the board, and then I'll open it up to discussion. I've been kind of very involved in this week, so I just want to share the information I have. The credits that we would earn from this change would be $4,638.94. Now, when we approved the original bid, we went ahead and went with the concrete pathways, but to have ADA compliant pathways, we would have to make a much longer pathway.
This is the elevation.
Because it has to be 5% grade. Now it would make a very nice, like the proposal is nice and it ties the space together, but the additional paving would add $8,656.80 overall. So that would mean that what we're paying out would be a change order that would be an increase over what we approved.
4,000 total. You net out the credit?
Yeah. Although there is one caveat that I have to explain later. Then I asked them to go ahead and prep it. I asked about, well, what if we did the ADA compliant crushed stone? Would we be able to pave on top of that? And they were like, yes. If you went ahead and installed that, you could then do the paving at a future date if you wanted. If you didn't want to have to pay out the additional amount. So that's what that proposal is. So they're showing, if we said, okay, let's not do the concrete this year and let's stick to the ADA crushed stone, that would have a total cost of $3,880, and then that would be slightly under what we approved.
Was there so if we chose option 2, would we get the 10,000 back for the original concrete estimate?
It would be
That's the only question.
yeah, we would take away the concrete. and then add back in the $2,080. And then there would be a new charge of $1,800.
So basically, you're getting 10,000 back and you're paying out 3,800. So it's a, what, $6,200?
Yeah.
Net credit?
Because this was the original, the concrete 88 from parking area to pavilion.
Yeah, so I do have to have one caveat. So we made a mistake when we approved the bid. And they said that they understood why that happened. We subtracted the $2,080, but it should have stayed because they have to do that. And then they put the concrete on top of it. So our proposal was actually 2,000 less than. So we can do the math, but I'm just letting you guys know, we approved the bid without that 2,080, so.
So the cost by not going, the net cost by doing stone dust instead of concrete is about $6,000.
The net savings, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I believe so.
And if we were to pave it at a future date, it would cost much more than $6,000, right?
I think so, yeah, it would probably be, well, you'd subtract 4,000 from 18,000, it'd be about $14,000 probably.
I mean, couldn't we pave it though?
We could pave it with blacktop, oil and chip, but I feel like it would be better if even if we were gonna wait and budget it for next year, it would be better to do concrete.
But if we do the concrete now, it's just gonna cost an additional $4,000 budget net.
Yeah.
Is there a material difference in terms of ADA usability?
Well, we did get a public comment about that.
Right. But the comment was make it usable, but is there an appreciable difference between compressed stone dust and concrete? I imagine there is, because the stone dust will deteriorate and need to be
Yeah,
touched up every year.
yeah, I imagine for something like wheelchair access, like that would definitely. There would definitely be a difference there.
And we're already talking about water pooling down there, so I don't know what would happen.
I think it makes sense to spend the $4,000 now rather than $4,000.
Where are you getting the 4,000? Where do we go?
The 4,000, the marginal cost of
Your factor then.
it's the 18,000 minus, we're talking net outlay, so it's the $18,000 for this, of which, of the 18th, for option one, we've already budgeted 10,000 of that 18,000.
Well, we budgeted about 8,000. Because we didn't keep that to that, so that when we do this, I have to add that back in.
So it's still 6.
It's 6, yeah.
Which is still cheaper than going back and throwing concrete down at a future date,
Right.
but
Can I-
not counting the
Yes,
cost of
suggestion?
maintenance.
I think doing it all at once is the right thing to do, because then if you move to a later date, then again, you're now taking away from the park again, and you're at the discretion of possibly the highway department if you're trying to do it. In-house, and then they also don't have a paving machine, so
Yeah.
they have to depend on another town. I personally think you should just do it while the machine is there and the company is there doing it, and you've done it out of the way. Plus, I think that would look better for like the public comment we did receive. I don't know if somebody would feel like, oh, we'll get to that at a later time, great, and I got the feel that a lot of people that aren't used to ADA compliant, they get put on the back burner a lot, and that's just the feel I got from that comment, and I kind of feel like if we did that, that's kind of. I think that would be the feel that he would have, the gentleman. Put it off.
I mean, it sounds like we would be doing concrete at some point in the future anyway, and it makes more sense to do it now when it's there.
Charlotte?
I was gonna say, we're also changing the location we're saving from the septic system that we have to use now on upkeep and
Yeah.
servicing. So that yearly
Mhm.
amount that we would pay out of professional services is probably really only 2 or 3 years worth of that professional service we're saving worth for us to do this concrete. So to me, that balances. I think that we should do it right and do it from the start correctly. I think that our kids are the future of this area and we need to make sure that their area is safe and accessible to all of them. So I think that we should do it concrete myself and hopefully you have an idea where to find 4,000 in our.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's good. We have.
We have, it's in the it's in the
It's within the
capital.
cap. That's what I thought. So yeah, so I'm for it. I also worry about the water washing out
Okay.
the entire path if it's there, like if the catch basin's at the bottom of that, water goes downhill, so it could be gone by next summer, depending on how our winter is and how our spring is, so.
And hurricane season.
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, potentially worse hurricane season.
It's terrifying, but. Any, Alexis?
I'm just signing off on what everybody said, as long as the math is mathing and get the proportionate amount of concrete, versus the two plans, then, yeah.
Michael?
I think spending the extra money makes sense, but, I think we need to redo this change order because all of this stuff, if the net change is 6,000, like that's not reflected in these approvals. Right?
Well, I was gonna ask Mary Lou if I just needed to do a separate resolution or if we should include that in the change order, because we approved the work, but we didn't understand the cost proposal. So Mary Lou, the question is when we approved the concrete pathways initially, we should have included the cost of the gravel, but we subtracted it. I'm just gonna pull up the bid proposal so I make sure we do the math right.
I apologize. My computer went a little wonky there for a minute. I was trying to answer you. I think you can just make that change in your resolution.
Okay,
So it's actually a net of 8,000, right?
no, I think it was.
So we're getting 4638 back. And 94 cents, so that's credit. We have the 10,800 for the concrete already budgeted,
No,
Right.
We have
8,600.
We have 8,000.
even.
We owe 10 too.
So we need to. Let's break it into 3 portions.
10
First of
minus
all,
4.
accept the change in the scope of work that relocates the project, which saves $2,000 in earthwork and saves $2,638.94 on septic. And then we approved a $2,080 increase in the concrete work. Plus the 56.80.
No, plus the 10,000.
Okay.
Plus the 10,000.
Right. Well, no, the net is 2,000 because we are saving 8,000.
So it's.
We already have 8,000 budgeted, so we're
Yeah.
$2,080 over budget on that ADA parking area to pavilion. And then adding in the 8656, which is the second part of that option B.
I thought you said when we initially awarded it, we took out the base material.
We did,
So that has to go back in.
yes.
So the 2,000 needs to go back in. We have 8,000 already in there. So the 10,000 needs to go back in, which is 12.
No, so it goes, so that basically scratch the concrete ADA from parking area to pavilion.
So subtract 10,880.
Add 2,080 to $8,656.80.
Okay.
Then subtract $4,638.94 from that. That's where we're getting this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so Just get the.
Exact amount is a credit of 46.38 and 94 cents. We are adding 2,080 to the concrete.
Sorry, we can approve the net change, right?
$119.54 is the net change with our credit.
And so the option, the 18,000 option should just read whatever the changes.
Well, they're saying that's if you took the cost sheet that we used, that's what it would cost in the cost sheet. So I think we will just,
So that's an amendment to the cost sheet, not
yeah,
net cost.
exactly,
No.
because this doesn't even show the credit, so we'll just do the change and in the resolution. We can say what the net change is. Because it'll be a total cost of walkways of $18,736.80. With a net change over the approved total. What was it?
$6,119.54. Someone wants to double check me with the calculator. I did that all along.
Oh, okay.
So it's 18,736 minus 8,000, which is already budgeted. Minus the $4,638.94 credit.
I got $6,097.
That's what I got. That's what I got too.
Check your pen.
86 cents?
Yeah.
That's what I had too.
Okay,
Oh, well, I
took it off.
I did it how you literally said, Aaron, with crossing out the 10,080, so I was off by $100.
oh,
I did it literally
yeah, sorry, I was being.
in my calculation.
Okay, so
Now
let
that
me,
makes sense. I was like, that's good.
I would just like to review the resolution that I printed out and make sure that we get everything in there correctly. So we have the change order credit. We're selecting the concrete ADA walkways. And I guess we should say trying to think of how to phrase that. I think it's not an additional, it's a total cost at a,
Well, why don't we just put the additional cost in? Which is 6,109, I'm sorry, which is $1,736.80, which is offset by the credit.
so what I said is, okay, I see what you're saying. I said that we will go with concrete ADA walkways at a total cost of 18,000, which will be a net
Which will be
increase
reduced.
of that 6,097 over the approved total.
Should we also mention the total, grand total?
I don't think you need to.
I have to.
So
Actually, I printed out the contract, so I have it right here.
So it says, whereas the town board has reviewed the options presented and determined that proceeding with the concrete ADA walkways at a total cost of $18,736.80 less 10,000 already, I'm sorry, 8,000 already budgeted. And applying the credit of 4,638.94 equals a net increase of 6,119.54.
Okay,
So maybe she had a total.
I've got it. I'm putting it in there for you, Michael.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, all right. You guys ready? I'm gonna do this because I like to read resolutions out loud that I didn't include on the agenda, so I'm gonna do that. Unless someone else wants to read it. But I made the notes, I guess, so I should read it. Okay, so whereas the town of Rochester. I'd like to make a motion that whereas the town of Rochester has, oh, hold on, Mary Lou, are you okay with all that? I didn't ask. Okay, good.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I have lots of numbers crossed off also.
All right, whereas the town of Rochester has entered into a contract with Rustic Roots Farm for the construction of a seasonal restroom facility at the Harold Lipton Community Center. And whereas the contractor has submitted change order request 1 dated May 22nd, 2025, proposing a relocation of the restroom facility to an alternative site on the project grounds due to the following conditions at the original.
Isn't this
Stop
at the
you.
park?
It's not at the Harold Lippman Community Center, it's at the town.
Oh, sorry.
I was like, don't read the whole
Oh.
thing and make me have you reread
Okay,
it.
at the town park. Yes.
Everything's normal here, I get it.
Okay, so it's at the town park. I apologize. I did this very quickly.
Everything's normal.
So I'll pick up, to an alternative site on the project grounds due to the following conditions at the originally proposed location. Presence of an existing catch basin requiring relocation at an additional cost. Seasonally wet ground with a high water table, need for significant fill to bring site to grade. And whereas the proposed new location offers the following advantages: naturally higher, drier ground, reduced need for fill and associated disruption, avoidance of expensive utility relocation, installation of a more efficient and low maintenance septic system. And whereas the town engineer, Peak Engineering, has reviewed and approved the proposed new location as suitable for construction and long-term use. And whereas the town recreation director has reviewed the proposed location and reported that it improves visibility and supervision of campers participating in the recreation department summer programming. And whereas the change order cost includes credits totaling $4,638.94 related to earthwork and septic system changes, and presents 2 optional upgrades for ADA accessible walkways with differing cost implications. And whereas the town board has reviewed the options presented and has determined that proceeding with concrete ADA walkways at a total cost of $18,736.80 best aligns, less, so total cost of $18,736.80, less the $8,000 already budgeted, and applying the credit of $4,638.94, which is a net increase of $6,097.80.
6,119.54.
6,097, I don't know what I said, sorry, I thought that's what I said, $6,097.86 over the approved total of $194,679.35, which best aligns with the goals and budget of the project. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Rochester authorizes the town supervisor to execute change order 1 with Rustic Root Farm, I think it's LLC. Approving the relocation of the seasonal restroom facility and the concrete pathway, ADA compliant pathways as presented in the contractor's proposal dated May 22nd, 2025. that's redundant, but, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor is authorized to sign said change order on behalf of the town of Rochester. And that the executed document shall be filed with the town clerk.
Before we vote on, we check them out.
I second, so we have a second.
Yeah. I do wanna, so Charlotte just seconded, I think in the whereas with the benefits, it should be avoidance of expensive utility upgrades. Not relocation.
Why?
Because they're saying with the use of the pump. They said that in their change order and I just,
So get rid of the upgrade and put in change order.
you know,
Get out of relocation, say it.
So 976.
okay, great. Okay, I guess should we, you guys are okay with the amendment that I just made?
Second as amended.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, all those, okay, I sent you the Word version. Okay. Great, thank you guys. Okay, so now we're on, so this is a discussion heavy agenda. So. Just a reminder that, we did talk about how discussions can go, and I'm not predicting anything, but I'm trying to be really aware that like if we need to take a break. We can take a little break, just sometimes, it's just a lot, it's a lot of topics. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm gonna try to, be really good about that, making sure that we're following that, that community agreement that we came up with at the beginning of the year. Okay, the first one is a request for bids for the Queens Highway culvert installation. I gave you guys a heads up about this, but it came like really down to the wire, so we did a budget modification recently to hire an engineering firm to do the engineering specs for the installation of the culvert at Queens Highway. So Queens Highway's been flooding due to increased beaver population. And the culvert that's there cannot, it can't withstand the beaver, so there's no beaver proofing. The new culvert is much larger. And it shouldn't have any issues, but because of the size, it's not something that our highway department typically does the work on. So they wanted to bid that out and have someone else do it. But we also needed the, instead of having that firm do the engineering, we hired an engineer to do the specs for us, and that'll be part of the bid package. So that is the 72-page document that I emailed you guys.
So we already have the culvert,
Yes,
and this is just for the engineering and we have the engineering done.
the engineering's done.
So this is just the installation.
This is a bid for the installation. We do think it's gonna cost more than $35,000, so we're bidding it. So we have to, anything over 35,000 has to be a bid.
So what you need is adoption of a resolution to be able to put it out for bid.
Yes, so there was one thing that I was squeezed and I didn't get to, I'd like to ensure that the highway superintendent or acting highway superintendent can participate in the bid selection process. They can't be a scorer. But we need to include that.
As an advisory capacity.
Yeah.
There's also,
Yeah.
the,
Go ahead. I wanted to see if you guys had any comments and then we can.
we misidentified, so if deputy highway superintendent is gonna be the point of contact, we refer to our deputy as the town highway superintendent, so I'll
Yeah, we should clarify that.
just say town highway superintendent. Well, I think
Or
we should just say,
acting.
Right.
Is it acting? It's deputy though. It's not acting.
Oh.
The deputy acts, but his official title is deputy, correct, Kate?
Yes.
so just name it for the deputy, it's the.
You can put input of the highway department.
Do we have this or do we have to go to Peak to change it?
I can share, I don't have the Word version, I just have the PDF, but this is for us.
It's page 5.
Right, and everywhere in the document just change.
I think it's all, I think I only saw that one.
And then it says 31st day of August. But I think
Or what does it say, 33rd?
31st.
Okay, so. What? I'm circled. What is, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the page 5.
It's page 5 in like the PDF. so it's
Okay.
not-
It's not,
It's
it's
not
like
page number.
printed. I should just Google or do a word search for his name.
Yeah. It's the 5th page in the document, so if you scroll down until Adobe says page 5.
All work shall be coordinated. Well, here's the, I guess, I think we need to frame it conditionally as town highway superintendent or.
Just as part of this, just input from the highway department.
Well, this is a different, Michael's bringing up a different point, whereas it says, it calls Jared the town highway superintendent. So the question is, how do we say, but if the town highway superintendent were to come back?
Can we just say acting? Mary Lou, acting highway superintendent, can we say that in both?
I think if you put town superintendent, when he's not there, the deputy automatically steps into his place. So I think you're okay with
So just
having
take
it.
his name out. We should just take his
Right.
name out.
Yeah, take his name out, absolutely. And just
Okay.
put in highway superintendent, and then if Jeff's not back, it's Jared who steps
Okay.
in.
The one question I had though, I mean, it says the town supervisor is seeking bids. Is that, should we say the town of Rochester?
Should be town board.
Town board.
There was somewhere else that they referenced the town supervisor, meeting the requirements of the town supervisor. That one, so H was one where I was like, I'm not the one who's coming up with the requirements, so, I'm not sure how to phrase, it says the contractor shall coordinate all work activities with town representatives and shall be responsible for meeting the requirements of the town supervisor.
Town board. Which
Okay.
delegate you.
Might be financial requirements, but I'm like, go out to that Colbert. Okay. No, I am learning how to read engineering design for bridges. Okay. Good. Okay, did anyone see anything else that?
I'm just trying to find, can we give the scoring bonuses like we normally do for veteran, women? Bio,
Let me see where that is.
I'm trying to find it in here.
And then I wanted to look at the timeline too. And then the contract is in this one, which,
Is there a reason the town is reinstalling the guide rails? Because we have them removing them,
They probably have to remove them to put the culvert in
yeah,
and then put them
I'm
back.
just wondering if we just have them, put them back.
Well, I would think you'd want to, because it's in a dip. And if you don't have the rails there, you're gonna go off.
Right, but I'm saying have the contractor bid putting them back instead of.
Sorry, I thought you were saying they need to be back. in the
Yeah,
wall.
no. Guardrails are good, I don't let anyone go in the street.
I think it'll probably cost less to have our highway department put the
Yeah,
guardrails back up. That's just my over having a contractor.
Yeah, I just don't know if like in the process of them, is it gonna be more work once all the work is done? But I guess we could do it while they're.
They coordinate with the highway department to put that in.
Yeah.
So. We are not, Mary Lou, my understanding is we're not, even though we have a best value. Policy, if it's a public works project, we don't have to do it.
You don't have to use best value, correct? It's an option available to you.
Okay.
Is it a cheat sheet somewhere that can just give me a quick breakdown of like the scope of what the highway department does versus what we generally bid out? I'm just for my own education.
I don't know if there is like anything actually like in writing like that.
Yeah, I could say they do like all paving, maintenance and improvements of town-owned roads. Typically, in the past, they had done a lot of bridge work, but because we've been relying
The
on
machinery, right?
grants and things, we are having like outside firms do that with these bigger bridges, but they do like all the culverts, the highway department does. This one is big. The culvert is like this big.
Oh, yeah.
It's like huge. And they just didn't feel like they had the expertise to install that.
And you're going in the water.
Have you
There's
found
CEC regulation that go.
No, I
There's
know.
nothing for scoring, it's lowest bidder, it says. in
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That it has to be awarded, so
I understand what you're asking.
that it will be,
If there's any.
for our, award or rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, the contract will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder within 45 days after bid opening, complying with these contract documents. The owner reserves the right to reject any or all proposals or to waive any informality or technicality in any proposal in the interest of the owner. If at this time this contract is to be awarded, the lowest bid submitted by a responsible bidder does not exceed the amount of funds then estimated by the owner is available to finance the contract. The contract will be awarded on the base bid or alternative basis, base bid bids, where applicable. If such bid exceeds such amount, the owner may reject all bids or may award the contract on the base combined with such deductible alternatives applied in the numerical order in which they are listed in the proposal as produces a net amount which is within the available funds.
So. The, two questions I have. One is I wanted to just look at the timeline that they proposed. Now, the time crunch is that this really needs to have, they would really like this to happen during summer. So while school is not in session, because the traffic, Jared came and shared this with us at our last meeting. But the traffic when school is in is just so much heavier and they really want to do this when in the time span between when school is out and school convenes. reconvenes, or convenes, I don't know, it's a new year. So, that's also why it's a little squeezed for here. So I just wanted to review, make sure we have enough. I think we need to leave a week between bid opening and us, at least a week to give us time to review. Cause I think that is a liability if we don't have time to like review things thoroughly. So that's the only thing I think that I wanted to share, is that we should make sure there's a week between the bid opening date and our next meeting, that we might want to do the awarding. Then, my second question to you guys is, this did come in like under our 36-hour, and it's 72 pages, so I also just wanted to check in and see if you guys feel comfortable approving this.
Are there any required TEC permits, or do we have to stipulate they have to do any necessary permitting? I know we talked about surveying, but they're gonna be working in this, it's an unnamed stream, but I don't know.
I know that I talked to Jared about this, and I think we just have to not be in there after. There's a before time period where we can't be in the stream. It's like in May or April.
Cause of like spawning, trap spawning stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's anything required of the DEC. I just wanna make sure that it's
Just add it in, and if they don't need it, they don't.
Yeah, they do have to, there is a thing about following laws, but we could,
I'll just say following laws and any necessary permits.
Yeah, you're right. They don't allow New York State Department of Transportation.
It just, yeah, it doesn't say that they have to, there's nothing about permits, for them obtaining permits. It says that we have a right to look at any of their permits in their books, and that, there is towards the bottom, in specifications, it talks about permits of legal loads on public highways, and, that's it. And then the permits are issued at the discretion of the highway department, and only under special conditions over specified highways at designated times, and do not apply to the hauling of materials for construction contracts. So I, yeah, just remind their example. So we have nothing on that they have to get any permits for digging or street work from DEC. That I can.
So I just add after they say, follow applicable laws and obtain any necessary permits.
so. Maybe we just need to, I'm just looking at that page, it is page 5. And it actually doesn't say that, so maybe we should just add I. All work shall be done. In accordance. With
Local and state law.
local. and state laws. Are you guys satisfied with that, or you want me to?
Contractor shall be required to secure any necessary permits or. Are you adding that on page 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the timeline puts they're saying the bid package would be available June 4th, which is like a week and a half from now. And then they would be accepted until June 27th. And then, it doesn't give the award date, but that would give us, let's see. That would give us. That would give us, that full week, that last week of June, we don't have a meeting, so our meeting would be the 10th. So that would give us, yeah. So that would give us more than a week. We could make them do like on June 30. Yes, if we wanted, but.
We're not gonna do anything with them, I just wanted to give them time to.
Yeah. Okay, and then got Chuck.
We name the stream.
I thought it was the Millbrook, but
Mary Lou, do we get rolling
No,
for
it's
name
above.
streams or is that DEC?
It's above me.
These.
Easy.
we can just declare things
Yeah, we can declare something.
once we put the culvert up. Okay,
And it's like 90% of it is like boilerplate, so I think.
yeah.
Like it's full of it.
Mary Lou, how do you feel about the bid document?
I think it's good. I think you could, just in your resolution, put as presented and amended at this meet, the whatever date it is. Today's the 22nd, at the May 22nd, 2025 town board meeting. Thing is, you did make a couple minor amendments.
Do I need to make those amendments contingent upon like approval of the engineer? Do you think, or do you think it's fine?
You can say that. That's fine, because they are their bid documents, so just in case they had reasoning for doing it as they did.
Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we ready for that resolution? The only change is as amended at the May 22nd town board meeting and contingent upon, changes contingent upon approval of the engineer.
My motion is presented in this area. For amendment.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, great. So our next discussion item is the community housing fund, and so that process. I hadn't really planned for this, but we do have 2 housing committee members here that if you guys would like, we can invite them to the table.
I'll let you guys decide. I'm biased, no matter.
Well, I can share that,
I don't think they know what you sent us.
no, they do. Well,
They do?
Ken
Ken
does.
does, okay.
Ken knows. So. Everyone.
Committee votes.
The committee knows. Okay, well, if we might have questions for you, and so what I was gonna share is. The housing committee had kind of reached out with our blessing to kind of say, hey, like, what's involved in passing this legislation? And that this was like back in January and February, and then they just stopped communicating. And then I sent an email sort of asking what the time frame was, what they could do, and then I didn't get a response, and then I included an aid, and then they were like, oh, we put that bill forward in April. So there is a bill sitting in committee in the assembly that authorizes the town, so it's a draft, it hasn't passed. But authorizing the town to create a housing fund and real estate transfer tax that is subject to mandatory referendum. Now, when I emailed, they were like, well, all of these things have to happen by June 12th. So
Including a Senate bill.
including a Senate vote, yeah, so it had, but. So it sounds like the order of operations would be, and I didn't prepare, because this just came in, I didn't prepare anything. So, it has to pass in the Senate and then it can be put to a vote, and then we would need to pass a resolution. Which I had drafted all of this back in March, but.
You also need the governor's signature.
Yeah, so.
Well, the June 12th is the end of the session, so the governor could still sign it.
Yeah, this governor can sign it after that, but yeah, it's still contingent upon those things. So I did reach out to our senator to see what, but I haven't gotten any aid contact for him, so I don't even know what their schedule is, because it's not as transparent as the assembly. So that's making me feel, because our next meeting is June 12th, so like we can't pass everything has to happen before then, before their last day in session. So it's making me feel like, I don't know why they would do that without telling us, first of all, that is a little weird. But it's making me feel like this isn't possible for something that we would move forward on this year for our locality, but it sounds like it's possible that it could get passed, and then we would be able to do this at any time. Does that make sense?
You mean that they'll pass enabling legislation?
Yeah.
for the entire state?
I think they're willing to just do it for us.
Yeah.
Both, it sounds like at least our assemblyman, I mean, he did it without even talking to us.
Doesn't sound like they're willing to do it. It sounds like they're willing to introduce the bill.
Well, yeah, they're willing to introduce the bill, they're willing to engage with us, so I think we can continue to move forward building those relationships. But with the timeline, I don't think it's possible for it to be of anything that we would be taking action on as a locality, like for the ballot, at least this year, but it means that we have a foot in the door, I feel like. And that we can continue to move forward in that regard. Does that make sense? I also had issues with the bill. So that's the other thing. It caps the percentage at 0.5%. And so I asked Senator Obermacher how we can change that. So there's things like that. So we can't, I just feel like a lot needs to happen
But
with that.
wasn't introduced in the assembly,
Yeah,
so they have to amend
yeah,
the bill.
I'm not as familiar with this process. So that's the other thing is I'm like, I didn't dive in because we didn't even know that they were willing to introduce the bill.
Or that they had done,
Huh?
or that they had done.
Or that they had done it, so. But I think those are conversations we can have, I just don't, they recess on June 12th, so I don't think that we can get that law the way we would want it before then.
When do they open again?
September.
When do they open
When do
again?
they reopen?
Usually they reopen in January.
Yeah, that's what I
So just,
It's
we had
6 months.
started this outreach to them last year before the election. So you're talking October or early November, because it was before the election, I remember that. So
2024.
yeah, 2024. And they wanted the assemblyman's office said, let's get the template done and have it ready. So things are gonna get crazy at the end of session, and this way it won't be a last minute thing. That's what they had
Good
said.
for that.
Good job.
Better to make it less.
So I've never heard of this happening before, where they would actually enact the home rule law.
Without talking to us.
Yeah, also usually, they like to get credit for when they do something that you've asked them. So it was, to say, I'm kind of flummoxed. But as to one thing that Aaron mentioned just briefly, it is not unusual for the Assembly and the Senate to have differing bills that get resolved literally on the last day of session.
Last day.
Sometimes in negotiations, sometimes something like this would be usually pretty non-controversial. In terms of, it's not gonna be, a major controversy in the state legislature, but, I think, you can wait and follow up with Senator Obracher and, take it away. I think the door has been open for you.
Yeah, I think the door is open. Yeah.
So should we get our ducks in a row and decide exactly what language we want to suggest to them, and then maybe refresh the timeline of how we want every step to go forward? And then do something to kind of show our intention for moving forward?
Yeah, I actually thought I thought that in order for them to introduce the bill, we had to pass a resolution, which is what I was gonna be prepared for tonight, but they already did it, so. I didn't know that, I thought that was the resolution we needed to do, but
So sorry, I used the restroom, when we started, so it's been introduced. So technically it could be passed.
no,
No, right? 'Cause we know
the Senate has
or
to,
Senate,
Well, it's in committee, so the
Yeah,
assembly.
it's still in committee, so Assembly and Senate both have to pass and
So
Governor has
what I
to
would do
sign.
is talk to the assembly, the sponsoring assembly person, ask them to change the
The
percentage.
language, yeah.
See what the chances are that it's gonna get out of committee, and then also on a parallel note, contact the senator and ask him to introduce parallel legislation with the correct number.
so, yeah, I can definitely do that. The aide was said that, we just need to get our senator to pick it up, is what he said, but maybe. If it's still in committee, then they can still edit it, and then we can do that at the same time. And I did reach out to Oberrocker and ask him about increasing the percentage already.
So what are we going with them? Because I saw two numbers being thrown around, right?
I mean, I just think we should increase it. I didn't ask a specific
Isn't the
number.
max two?
Hmm?
Isn't the max two?
the max two is two.
Total
for
for-
CPP.
So I think Ken has done a lot. of
Yeah,
research
and
on this.
so the model for this starts with, what was the preservation fund down in Long Island. And they did 2% for the community preservation fund that was limited to Long Island. Subsequently, that legislation was used as a model for community preservation funds, also at a maximum of 2% for the Mid-Hudson region, including Ulster County eventually. So when they turned to community housing, they had already locked in 2% to community preservation. So the fact that they only added 0.5% for housing, I think was a prudent recognition that there's some, there has to be some limit on how much you want to get out of real estate transfer taxes. So, when we're starting with a clean slate, I mean, if I were starting from a clean slate entirely, I would say have a 2.5% maximum for every community and let them decide the proper balance, each community. But anyway, that's kind of so there was existing state legislation with 0.5%.
Yeah, that's what was
The
used.
Peconic Bay, and there was also a state law trying to extend this statewide at 0.5%. And my understanding from Adam Bosch, who was speaking with people in the Senate, was that there was not an appetite in the state Senate for a statewide bill for community housing. And they're also kind of rolling back their support for preservation, but that's a separate issue. But that they thought maybe they could accept a regional or sub-regional. So a home rule can sometimes get in because no legislator in Onteora has to say, I mandated this tax. They simply will allow it. But any tax increase is something that people give, good and fair consideration to.
So I think it's our job to figure out these maximums, so. When we're considering the community preservation, real estate transfer tax will be setting that, and I think we need to consider the housing transfer tax when we're doing that. I think we need to be considerate of that. But I think if we could, that one in the enabling legislation, which is for the Mid Hudson Valley, they give us up to 2%. So for this, we could ask them to increase it to whatever we want. But I think knowing that we want to balance those two, like in the end, does that make sense?
Why do I have a memory that the total real estate transfer tax is 2%?
Yes, that was brought up.
That's another.
I have the same, I was just looking that up. I had the same memory.
CPP wanted 1.5%, and I remember wanting to drop it to 1 because there's only a max of 2.
Yeah.
Right, for all combined.
Right.
Why don't we just say 1 and 1?
That's
Well-
what I want us to do on the ballot.
I still think we ask the
Right.
assembly to authorize 2% and then whatever we decide. Because the preservation is authorized up to 2%. And then we can authorize this up to 2%, and then if in the future we want to change the
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah,
then-
that's what I was gonna suggest we
Yeah.
do. But I think we should commit to 1 and 1 personally.
Right,
But-
right, okay.
So for purposes of legislation, up to 2.
Yeah, so that's what you guys want me to request.
That's good.
So, and then if you guys wanna look at that bill, and if there's any other requests, I can send those to the chief aide, who is very responsive today. Was responsive.
Totally your decision, and with respect to the question you Coleman, that's a very good question, but if you ask for permission for 2%, somebody in Albany is gonna say, hey, wait a minute, for housing, they already have permission to do 2% for preservation. So we in Albany are essentially authorizing the town of Rochester to have a total rent up to 4%. And that may raise some eyebrows. And it may cause unnecessary friction, since I don't think you're entertaining amongst yourselves the notion that you really want a 4% real estate transfer tax.
Well, I think there's a section of law that wouldn't allow the combined to be 4%. Combined could only be 2%.
Okay.
I think
if
that-
You're right. If you're
I
right,
think I could also try to talk to some people
yeah.
and have a conversation before we're,
I was
You
gonna
know-
ask if you could be the waters with the 8 before for 1
Yeah.
or 2%, because I agree, I would want it to match our maximum for CPP. But if that is gonna shoot us in the foot for getting it passed
Yeah.
sooner than later,
Then
I'd
we would
rather
go for
keep
1.
it to 1
Mhm.
if we
Yeah.
can.
I agree.
And honestly, if they think changing it all from the 0.5%, that's the, the pre-existing our precedent for doing the same law, I don't unsupport it. I wouldn't want to not have this go through with only 0.5%. I think that would make us have to adjust how we look at the preservation fund. More so than this and the percentage that we decide to dedicate there, but I think that no matter what, if they think that we can get it through, we can get it through, like,
Yeah,
I think
I see what you're
doing
saying.
like some feelers.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Cause I think getting 0.5 and then going and getting that approved this year if we can. And then going back and being, because there are other towns that have showed interest. The county has a strong interest in RETT. for
yeah, some of our
countywide.
neighbors have
Our
called
neighboring
me and
towns.
been like, can we get on this?
Yes, yeah, so we have other support, so if we are able to be the first and get in with 0.5% at a starter. And then levy with other towns next year to get a countywide one that goes up to 2%, like the CPP, for them to claim rule over a countywide one, I think that's greater. If we can increase it with our own assemblymen with neighboring towns that we share assembly or senate with, I think.
So that would be 2 separate votes, is what you're saying?
I'd rather
I'm-
go for the higher percentage.
No, I'm saying for Aaron to feel it out with them.
Yeah, I'll
But if
feel
they
it out.
say, you should really keep it as is with the 0.5, that we should do that, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying, then.
And you're saying we
regardless-
might have more options in the future.
Yes, that we can have more options in the
Yeah.
future to expand that, I think, but I think establishing it and getting the actual home rule established here is the most important, like, piece of it, because no matter what, we're gonna get 0% if we don't get our home rule, even if it's only the 0.5, so.
Well, yeah, and if we're asking questions, because I had asked if we should do this countywide. if we're not gonna make the June 12th deadline, and we can have it be for all of Ulster County, maybe we can close that.
So right now, the waters are very cold for doing any real estate transfer tax right now.
Yeah.
That is not like this, so statewide or like bigger regions. So I think that could be an option, but I think if they're willing to work with us, then we should just like go for it.
Yes, it's,
Just for us.
Yeah,
yeah, claiming home rule isn't always the easiest thing to do for us to declare for our, to actually have them introduce it, what we're declaring for home rule. So the fact that they did one with a sold town is, and didn't tell us, but that we did it, we got
Yeah.
it to someone to
That-
sponsor it.
in the
There's a lot.
forum that is streaming, or that we have on, that was. Patterns for Progress was saying, because they do a lot of work in Albany, and they were like. This is, you know, the bigger regional. Enabling legislations are not going through right now. So the state, I know we were excited about the statewide legislation, and they're like, that's just probably not gonna happen. So this was nice that they.
Didn't I say there was no hope for it, right? There was no hope for this year on the floor or to get it
Yeah.
introduced this year, he said
Yeah.
before they closed, and so we did that, so we already had no hope for this party, so.
Just goes to show.
Yeah, what we can do without knowing.
But I think this is good
Yeah.
because what part of the conversation I wanted to open up for the Community Preservation Fund was the tax number. And it sounds like we're all like very aligned on that.
Yeah, they're not over one regardless.
So that it's good that we're, you know, and it's, I think the only thing that might change that if we wanted was if we are limited to 0.5%. And we wanted to raise this one until, you know what I mean? We could do that
Yeah.
because there are a lot of options that the CPF can open up for us that could still support, you know, the two things don't have to work with each other. Okay, so do we feel like we've covered everything currently on the community housing fund topic? I feel like direction is just some more contact with our assemblyman and our senator, state senator.
I'm not gonna make calls to.
Okay.
Karen to.
Yeah, that would probably be helpful. For me.
I actually have a team of housing lobbyists, so I can probably have a call for us if it gets to the Senate to try to get it pushed through, so. Yeah, let me know.
Okay. So Community Preservation Fund. Okay, so at our last meeting, I presented like a timeline of. Here's where I'm at. I just want to share openly. I think you guys can follow suit. This is where I'm at. Last year, a lot of work was done on the Community Preservation Fund. It was a rushed process. We passed one of the local laws that establishes the fund. We had intended to kind of get feedback like earlier, but I take responsibility for getting that out late. But I would like to do what I can to get this passed and on the ballot this year. So that's where I'm at with this. So I'm letting you guys know where I'm at, and I definitely want to hear where you're at, but I would like to see this on the ballot, and I will do like what I can do to follow a process that we feel like honors what we committed to last year, or what some of us committed to, but also can recognize that most of the work is done and get it there. So that, I just want to be upfront about that. And the timeline that I came up with, Stuck it in a different folder, okay.
No, it's not, it's in the current meeting, it's not in the folder.
Oh, okay,
Stuff.
I just was not.
So there are two there.
There's. Oh,
There.
there's two here. Oh, you got it. So the timeline I came up with gives us some time ahead of scheduling the public hearing on the plan document. And the, there it is. So we've got, I had requested referral responses by June 12th so that we could get started looking by June 10th, which is my birthday, so that we could get started looking at them on June 12th. And just kind of give direction about like how we want to do revisions, which I want to talk about tonight. Then that would give us those 2 weeks to like do that work, and then we would want to have a final draft on June 26th that we could schedule a public hearing for. We would probably want to schedule the public hearing for the real estate transfer tax that day too. Just because the timeline is really short. In my timeline, the public hearing for the community preservation plan and the the tax, sorry, there's a typo in there, but that's for the tax. We would hold that on July 10th. So that only gives us one chance unless the only wiggle room we have is we could schedule special meetings. So if we got feedback in those public hearings and we wanted to go back and adjust something, we would, there's just not a ton of time in this timeline for
What's the
that.
legal notice period for special meeting?
72 hours.
For special meeting 72.
We could schedule it that night, so we could
Yeah.
schedule it July 10th. And then, Mary Lou, I wanted to ask a question because if we're editing a plan document and not the local law text itself, like how would we handle the public hearing if we made changes?
Well, I think that if you make changes to the plan, you still have to, they have to be made 8 days before because this local law adopts the plan. So it's kind of incorporated by reference.
But would we have to hold another public hearing
If we amend the
if
plan?
we amend the plan?
It depends upon the extent to which you amend the plan.
I think
And if it's based on comments from the public, there's not a hard and fast yes or no on this, unfortunately.
Okay,
If you're gonna amend it extensively, I think you want another public hearing. If you're just gonna make a couple little corrections, I think you're okay without a public hearing.
okay, so what I have here is we have the next month for changes before scheduling a public hearing. Then we have a month for public hearing and voting. So there's maybe a little tiny bit of wiggle room in there if we needed to make changes, but it would be tight and we want to be really careful about it when we were going through it.
You have 6 days.
So,
This is the most practical calendar that you can have.
Yeah.
And Aaron, I would suggest that because you'll recall from last year, this was very controversial. We got a lot of public comment in both directions on this. So I would suggest if you, after that initial public hearing, think you are going, if you are going to make changes, I would just schedule a continuation and have the changes available a couple days beforehand,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
rather than have, anyone
Could be
challenge
July
that you should have
24th.
had that.
Yeah, which could be the July 24th meeting. If we
Mhm.
want,
Yeah, 'cause
but
we close it.
you guys would have to have a printed copy of the plan, or it has to be a PDF emailed to you. like 8 days in advance
8 days in advance to vote on it, right?
to vote on it.
So if you want to vote on it,
Public, we have to post it 48 hours in advance.
Or
of
any of the big,
adoption.
or any of the big controversies that were brought up, anything that we could address in terms of messaging, or is it just people coming out, we just don't want a tax for this period?
I wouldn't characterize it like that. I would, the 3 buckets of criticism, and I will say, in varying degrees, I'm sympathetic to all of them. One is there was messaging that this isn't really a tax, and the counter was, well, it really is a tax, and that it does impact people in town that are looking to buy homes or, you know, sales between generations and things like that. So a lot of the public comment was, this isn't gonna impact any of you, and then there was a response that was like, well, actually, it will, and the buyer, you know, pays that price. So, I'm sympathetic to that, but I also feel like we need, I think that having the value that we have in having more of a stakeholder edge for these things, and the same goes for housing. I think, to me, I'm balancing that with the impact that that tax would have. So that was one bucket. The second bucket was, hey, this process is supposed to involve the community, and it didn't. A plan was made, and then there were 3 sessions that were basically to tell people what was in the plan, but there was no time or allowance or opportunity to make any changes. So that was, you know, I think that was compelling, and we did get some feedback. And I actually got some today that was like, oh, there's like a mistake that in like the characterization of one of our parks. That's like, oh, we should definitely fix that. Now, does it impact the overall impact of the plan itself? This particular thing, no, but there might be a few things that do. And the board, we at the time kind of got the plan and had like 3 weeks. And it wasn't even.
We got 2 weeks, not even.
It was like
200
hard for
documents
us to
were
even
reviewed.
read it. And I think, you know, part of that was like, well, we're asking people to vote, you know, we're not what we're doing is we're asking the voters to decide when we're making this decision. So like, I think that should be up more forward. And then the third bucket, I'd say, of criticism was that the way that the plan identifies which parcels should be focused on is based on like a score, and there's no priority put. And the enabling legislation like really clearly talks about how your plan has to have priorities, and it's like, then when you meet it, like there's all this stuff in it, and just the question of, we didn't really get down to the answer of like, does this match? Do we feel like this matches the spirit of the enabling legislation, or is this a way of not, you know, it doesn't really give it kind of says any parcel could be,
Yeah, it was way too wide of a net that could be it was pretty much like the whole town, if you were to map it.
Yeah.
Was on that list of what they said
Yeah,
to
which-
preserve, and without like actually clear priorities always. And agriculture was only mentioned twice, or
Right, that was
farms, so
another
that
thing
was like
that's
a really big
yeah.
point.
So those were yeah, go ahead.
and I think another thing was the plan was very, very broad, because there's certain things that you can use this funding for, and as priorities, everything that funding could be used for was put into the initial plan. And I think people are saying, let's narrow it down to which of these things do we really want to concentrate on in the next 5 years? Instead of saying, we're going to concentrate on all 5, maybe pick 1 or 2 or 3, and that's going to narrow down the scope.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I did find the open sort of like criteria-based analysis compelling, but I also understand like wanting to see more of our community like reflected. So I think, to me, that was, you know, I know that it was hard for all of us to kind of pump the brakes on that, because there was a lot of support for it, but that was what was like,
Okay.
those are the things I was like, you know what, we should address these. And if we can, like, I don't think we're gonna make everyone happy, but I do think that at least getting feedback, digging in a little deeper, kind of seeing what that, if there is like input that we are like, okay, let's incorporate it, I think we should. And if in the end, we're like, there's these 3 changes we think we should make, and otherwise we think it's great, then I do think that we need to make sure that we are explaining like our reasoning for that, and making sure that our, like, the way we're presenting it is really clear.
All that context is really helpful to just understand
Yeah.
how we want to proceed in the roadmap, and also so that we can refine our process to set up the housing resolution as well.
And for the members that are new, if you go, you can go back on YouTube and actually watch the public hearings, and you'll have all the comments right there in front of you.
And one of the information sessions was streamed, or 2 of them were, yeah.
I think one, because 2 were at firehouses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of them was the one that was here on the street, but.
So with this timeline, I guess, so I've already gotten 2 requests from 2 committees to extend their deadline. What I told one of them is, if you want to make sure that your feedback is considered with the most time by the board, please stick to the deadline. Because I don't want to make any promises, but so I wanted to ask you guys about that. I mean, I could tell them like, well, if you got us something like, you know, 4 or 5 days between the June 26th meeting, we could probably,
But like the 20th is like an unofficial, if they still want to turn it in.
yeah,
Any comment?
yeah, I
Like
could,
6 days
Can you say
before
what-
the meeting, and hopefully most won't.
the recreation committee, which we really wanted to get their input. So,
Said 2 then.
Hmm?
You said 2.
and the housing committee. I believe the planning board feels like they have plenty of time, because they actually had 2 meetings, 2 or 3 meetings scheduled in that time period. And the ECC was very excited, but I haven't heard that back. And then the agricultural advisory committee seemed really excited, but
Yeah, we talked
they-
about it.
oh, we did.
Yeah.
They want a little bit more time, or?
No, they didn't say that specifically,
Okay.
but that's being discussed.
Okay.
They just kind of wanted a clear idea of like what kind of information would be helpful.
Okay,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'll follow back.
yeah,
I do know that's the homework for the HPC.
yeah, they were excited about it, yeah. So I can follow up to all of those and say, if you have any questions, please reach out. But
It just compounds though, if we're gonna extend the date for multiple committees. It makes the crunch harder.
I agree. So, because I kind of want to get working on it, like for myself, get to like feel like I really know the document. In terms of the edits, though, I wanted to see how you guys want to do that. I can throw out some ideas, but SharePoint. It's gonna solve everything. So any thoughts about, I mean, it's a crunch timeline. And I'm gonna also be putting out some public correspondence, seeing about getting input from the public ahead of the public hearing too.
I mean, I think anyway, we look at it, we're gonna be at the crunch time, so. We just gotta get it done.
I guess there were 2 thoughts I had, is like, do we want to bring in anyone else to help with edits? Either it be other like people in the community. Do you guys want me to reach out to Ted Fink and see if like he would, I don't know, I'm looking at charts.
Should we see what the extent of the comments is before we do that and have a plan B if we do need to bring in additional? resources?
Like on the 12th, you mean, kind of do
Yeah,
a
I was
check
gonna
in
say,
on
I
the
think we
12th.
leave leave the deadline as June 10th. Knowing that we'll accept them up to the 20th, like personally, but we're not gonna change that or announce that to the committees. Hopefully
just
they watch
did.
our meetings, but I just said hopefully they watch our meetings,
Well,
Mary Lou.
I think where I phrased it.
Lot
kind of-
going on right now, in the world, so they might not tune in on their Thursday to us anymore, but, I think that, yeah, leave it as the official deadline, the 10th, so then we still have some wiggle room, and then at the 12th, we can decide if like, we need a little bit of a backup, like Ted or someone else if we wanna call in for like a secondary, referral
Yeah,
comment, you know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, like
a
it could
second
be
string.
obvious stuff, but yeah,
I
okay.
mean, Ted's contract is closed, right? So
It is, yeah, I would be like asking him for professional service up to a certain number of hours or something, but, or someone else, I mean,
we could also extend it to the committee that actually created the document. They heard a lot of that feedback too, so if they want to provide any suggested edits based off that.
I like that. I think we should circulate it to them, maybe, and see if they have any referral changing comments post. But they might, they're not, yeah, they might, because most of them sat through every hearing. I mean, they're at all of their events, but most of them were here for each of the public hearings we had, so.
I mean, they don't have
think
to,
that-
but if they.
But they don't have to be, yeah, but welcome it from them, and yeah, exactly.
okay.
Invited.
Okay, I feel like you guys, this was very solid. Alignment on this. And then also we're kind of feeling like 1% on the tax, because I think it's really good for us to know. Right?
Yes.
Because it was proposed at 1.5, so I think. We can just put that draft out for you guys if you guys want.
I can agree to 1% until June 12th. And then I'll let you know about it when the assembly closes.
Oh, yeah, right, no, yeah, like we talked about.
Yes, yeah. I was gonna say, if we do get home, we can do the housing RATT2, we should make them equal on the ballot, so. We can change it then though, if we can.
Okay, so, great, moving on, so.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Yes. A 2-minute break will do.
We're gonna take a 5-minute,
Recess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
but we're still gonna stream.
Thank you, it's past my bedhour. I'm getting old. So Erin, do I turn that letter in?
Sure, yeah, sure, that would be, I'm sure helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
I know. Me after each case when I stand up for jury.
Oh, I got a text that the highway department will do the guardrails, the guardrails.
Oh,
And paving. Fix it. I was like, I've been here.
I know.
Yes.
That's how they describe it.
Is that what it said? What I just said?
Flowers.
Oh,
The pledge, I think, recognized when we walked in, I was.
It's her spring fling.
Fun.
Aaron and Alvin and housing. That's why they forgot to email us.
Especially when it's 45 degrees out. A little-
They tried, they thought it was like Rochester City or something. People changing the It's not, that's what I'm running for, guys. Changing the name of town.
Wow.
Hamlettville.
No.
So if you could come up with. Yeah, I think that's why we don't get bids on anything.
Because they think it's the city.
Yes, because either they think it's the city and then they open it and it's 3 miles south, 330 hours south. Or they're looking for here and it's not popping up because it's hard to find town of Rochester, like you have to do town or Rochester, like you have to put it in weird.
Like Anna Rochester of Ulster County.
To find our census data, you have to type it in very weird, to find the exact census data of town, not her house and not by zip code. Cause you can find it, that's very.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
down to change.
We used to get so many bids, and it seems like the last 2 to 3 years, you might get 1 or 2. Just didn't know.
Where everyone else went.
I'm just talking my laptop that will not charge.
That,
Yeah. You know, like,
that'll do it.
that's the first thing that dies on these, like the batteries.
That'll do it. Why don't you?
I'm old enough to remember when you could like swap out batteries on your
Yeah,
laptops.
everything's attached. From side of the motherboard.
Building a cool gaming rig with your Razer keyboard. You a PC gamer?
Talked about it today, and
I know, I can't do any games. Once the head and the body started moving independently, I can't do it. That was like a Mario 2D.
Platformers.
I played video games for like, it's so bad.
Somebody screwed
no
up.
one's.
But you have a kid now, so you're gonna have to learn the entire new generation of whatever
Yeah.
kids are gonna be into.
Picture them perfectly.
I thought maybe, well, I only looked
We
through
all
one set of
virtual.
minutes.
I'm not able to do that either. All
Have you ever
Leo-
put one of, have you put an
Leo-
Oculus
No.
on it? It's,
Yeah.
Oh,
my ex-husband works in augmented reality, which I think is actually kind of more interesting. VR right now. Doesn't feel quite as
oh, okay.
uncanny valley, you know?
medical business.
Yeah. Kidding, Sam.
Go.
I hired some of the first engineers for that team,
Book pump.
Google Glass. Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah,
What were you doing you were at Google?
yeah, I hired for the Google X special teams.
What were you, like, were you in HR?
Well, I mean, it like people ops, so like.
Do you know, Jim Gilbert?
That name sounds familiar. What year was she around?
So. Whatever they call each other.
The big Mac Daddy that oversaw the department when I was there was, his name was Urs.
Ready to go. Okay. It's 8:30.
8:30.
Oh, you're doing the training though.
Oh, that's gonna be like 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, perfect.
My computer might die before then, so.
Oh. Okay, so I put the constable department on the agenda. We have some outstanding items. There were 2 that we had tabled from a previous meeting and 1 that has just kind of been floating undecided for over a year now. So, and civil service keeps asking me about it. So I thought we should just go through those. So number 1, let me pull up this. I was hoping to have a draft policy for you guys, which I only did a very rough draft and I didn't finish it in time or circulate it. So we were gonna do a, let me back up. Mary Lou, I don't know if you've been a part of this conversation at all, but for the Town of Rochester Constable Department, we have an adopted policy manual, and then we have the resolutions and the enabling legislation, the local legislation that establishes the department. But right now, and now it's subject to civil service, but right now it is, I couldn't find any policies or resolutions on file that set like a minimum staffing requirement. So the way it's been operating, at least in the time that I've sort of been aware, is that it is an on-call as needed agency. But there isn't like anything that sort of says you have to work at this amount of frequency. Just to sort of like keep people
You mean,
who are
you mean individuals, or do you mean this department?
individuals.
So minimum hours
Yeah.
per period
Yeah.
for individual.
And we discussed this before, and I kind of what the way I propose it is it's a math problem. So we basically have these scheduled hours, but now we have 7 constables, so it's kind of like, we don't want to set a minimum requirement that exceeds, and that would cause us to exceed available hours. So I think it does work to do like a 4-hour shift or an 8-hour shift once every 2 weeks, but part of that issue is it doesn't necessarily resolve like our staffing with the court, but we can also talk about other ways that that could be resolved. So, I just wanted to, I know I brought it up as a topic, and that's kind of what I was thinking, is just making sure that we are like, you know, making a requirement that is at like a regular frequency, that would cover. I don't know, we have like a set of staff that covers court. But I don't know that we want to require certain individuals to do certain, like, to do court versus the other patrols. Have you guys thought about this at all?
How many hours do we have budgeted a week for constable?
We have, well, it's 28 hours a week for court security detail plus, here, I have it listed so I can add it up. So it's basically 36 hours a week for court. Then what I budgeted this year, although we have a surplus because we haven't used this, is 8 hours a week for directed patrols. So that's outside of that. And then we have 15 hours a week budgeted for the administrative lead / supervisor position.
So is there a separate do we have a separate civil service category for the supervisory office?
No, we don't. But yeah, that's on the agenda too. So we can kind of talk about it all together if you guys want.
Do we have sufficient coverage for the courts? That's priority.
No.
And how would we, I mean, to me, coverage of the court is the primary goal. How do you have any recommendations on how we get coverage for the courts, first of all?
So, well, I was hoping we could handle it by hiring people that would be committing to a certain schedule. But I haven't been successful in that yet. I mean, we had a lot of applicants, but it is a longer process. So that's still kind of on the table because we have the positions available. But I also think having some kind of requirement would be helpful. And I mean, honestly, ideally, what I would like, now this doesn't take into consideration our regular staff because they, you know, there are people that work regular shifts, but if we had like 2 people that just covered all the hours, you know, that would be awesome, but we currently don't have anyone that has that availability.
And for the people what's the least amount of time that any individual constable is working? 2-week period.
Well, right now, it's probably 8 hours a month.
Over how many shifts?
You mean,
Are they doing like,
we have
2
one
hour
person
shifts.
that picks up shifts that has a lot of mandated, like can't pick up court shifts because they get mandated with their other job. And so they'll like be on the schedule when they can, or they also fill in when someone else has signed up for a shift and can't.
and does the department have any recommendations or suggestions?
Well, I mean, I think that's part of. I think one recommendation is that there just needs to be someone who is like in charge.
Scheduler. So why don't we turn the agenda upside down and hit the last bullet point first? In terms of somebody to manage some of those aspects.
Yeah, so we have, I don't think either one of you have actually been at a board meeting where we had this discussion. I can give the brief overview. So when the department was created, initially, we had a chief and then we had constables. And the chief was in charge, you know, the manager, the supervisor. And when it changed from civil service, it became civil service, they created one position,
They who,
civil service.
Ulster County.
so there's not a chief constable.
No.
In this.
Right, so what we were advised is you can't put someone in a supervisory position in civil service that like, it doesn't allow that, like you could assign someone administrative responsibilities, but in terms of like management of others, what this says is supervision is exercised over constable and support civilian staff. So, oh, sorry, that's the chief one. The other one doesn't say that. The one that's adopted and it doesn't say supervision.
I'm sorry, the job description that's in
Yeah.
the Ulster County.
Correct.
Civil Service.
Yeah. So we were advised not to have that hierarchy because that would just be a violation of how civil service works.
In Ulster County because they didn't adopt a civil chief.
Yeah,
constable.
right.
What is the process by which Ulster County can adopt a chief constable?
So,
I said, well, I talked to Rich about this and basically the way he explained it to me, and I don't know if I am misspeaking, but he said that for state policing agencies or constable agencies, somebody has to sign off as a chief, as a supervisor. And that because of the civil service disconnect and there not being a chief constable civil service position, he's signing off on things that he's really not authorized to sign off on. Or he's asked to sign off on things that he doesn't have the supervisory authority to do because there's no such position in Ulster County. And so that creates sort of an issue where if he can't legally, I mean, if he can't sign it, but he is, where are we exposing ourselves to liability? And in that case, who should be signing off on it?
so, well, I can answer all of those questions and these are just like factual statements.
Okay.
It would be me.
Mhm.
But I don't necessarily want to take that on.
No, and you shouldn't.
So then the other nuance is that the person signing off would be, and I do have a correspondence with DCJS that sort of clarifies that. The sticking point that has been before the board is the title chief. So initially, so the process to getting a position, you basically fill out a form, you send it to Ulster County. civil service. We did that years ago. We did it with the name lead constable. The sticking point is the title chief. DCJS said that it doesn't, someone's official title does not have to be chief. For them, it's like chief officer, so it's the officer in charge. However, they're like, however you want to name it, it should just be the person who has that ability.
Their recommendation was officer in charge.
No, I mean, I don't, that was an email chain. I had asked like, what other titles are there? And I think they made a suggestion. I don't know, it's been a while since I reached out to them.
I mean, since the department was created and when it was created, there was a chief. What is the objection to making a chief?
I would like to open the floor up.
Well, I mean, I've spoken at length about this, and I don't want to rehash all the reasons. I think for me, the primary concern is the title chief has specific meanings to people that is associated with police forces. This is not a full-time police force. They're part-time. There's no expectation that the person serving in this role is available full-time, is doing the responsibilities of what a chief of police would do. So that's why I was in favor of either officer in charge, lead constable, or one of those other positions, because I don't, in my mind, if we want to have a police force in town, that's something we should discuss. We should look at funding, and that's kind of a step up from what we want our constabulary to do. So that was my concern. And go ahead.
Didn't Michael Richardson advise us that for constables, you cannot have a chief?
No, he did not.
Okay, that's what I had thought he had said.
He had given his own opinion on the matter, but he said that
Oh, okay.
there was no
All right.
legal issue
So
with the title.
what I'm hearing, you're saying there are two separate issues. One is title and management of our existing force, and the other one is the role of the force within the community. And I think that we're seeing, by the fact that these issues have been lingering with staffing and, somebody working 4 hours every 2 weeks or whatever, it's a lot to put on Erin to have her sign off as whatever the chief law enforcement officers or head of the constabulary, and also have to worry about staffing and manning. And I think that it makes sense to have somebody, as was originally intended when the department was established, to have somebody be the administrative head of that.
Right.
And that's a different matter. That's a different issue. I mean, I don't care what the person's called, but I think that somebody has to have that role. That is a separate matter from what the role of the constabulary is in town. And I agree that if we have a policing force, that policing force should be available all the time, not Monday through Friday between noon and 4 p.m. or whatever the hours are that we happen to be staffed. So it's sort of like, if I'm calling a policing agency, I don't want to be told that, oh, it's off hours, you can't call us. I mean, it's either on or off. It's there or it's not there. It's a binary situation, which is a different issue, which is a different conversation, which is sort of what do we as a town board want to have in our community versus who's running the day-to-day tedious paperwork operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think the administrative responsibilities should not necessarily fall to Erin if she doesn't want to take those on. And so the issue for me was just really nomenclature, like lead constable, officer in charge, all of those things are fine. And I think the responsibilities that are currently being done by that person should continue to be done. And whatever we need to do to
make that regularized and legal.
Yeah, make it right normal within civil service. It was the title was where I was on.
I mean, I agree that a chief of a department of 7 people who work anywhere between 4 and 10 hours a week is inflationary. But if we can address the practical matters of management with that title, we can have the conversation about the role of the constabulary at a different time. And look at what those options are available, but I think we do need to solve the administrative and supervisory issue, because I don't feel comfortable having Erin, signing off for this stuff. I mean, she doesn't have any law enforcement training, right?
Mhm.
And it's a big responsibility, and I think it's unfair to her unless she really wants to do it. But I think it's an unfair burden on her to have her be the technical head of a department, at least on an administrative paper side. If she doesn't have the training, the police officer training and the credentials to do that.
Mhm.
Not saying that you're not good at it,
Right,
but
and I'm still the head of the department, so. Regardless, I'm still like the head of the department, it's the DCJS. Like register for the employment and then also signing off that they're training, like these are like. Things that, yeah,
you're a one-person civilian
I-
oversight.
yeah, now. So I agree, I think we do need, there does need to be someone who has the ability to supervise and to, to not, to have that like granted and reinforced. And I think the other part of it that, in terms of like the role that we've talked a lot about, I also think that I see how busy the department is, and with like, there's things that need to happen that aren't happening because we don't have the scheduling right. Ideally, for me, this might be opening up a bigger discussion, but I think that this role should be heavier administrative.
Mhm.
That like the time is that aspect of it, not necessarily being the like main patrol officer.
Right.
And that kind of is backed up by what a chief officer is, like when you, in other agencies, so it might also allow us to have more of that shift if we are able to get staffing, and so I think it's, now civil service, if we say go, they will just go, they check in about this with me from time to time.
And when you say go, you mean create a chief administrative?
Or whatever they're fine with whatever we call it. They initially came up with lead. That was their name. So
Constable administrator.
they had, now there were some edits that needed to happen, and the last time I spoke with them, they said that we should probably, if we were to keep it as chief, they suggested a couple more edits, which I can't remember at the time because it was right now, because it was a phone conversation, but they said there should probably be like beefier minimum qualifications. It would be a separate job competitive position, so it would require a different test.
I'm sorry, a different test.
Which obviously would probably take years for them.
So it's ready and you could technically, hypothetically email them tomorrow with how it was with lead constable originally, like without these red lines? Or
Some of the red lines we have to have, because they're the training requirements. I do think it should probably be something more than lead constable, but
I think officer in charge, I think that sounded the best out of all the options I've heard over the past few years.
the other option that we had was like chief administrative constable. We talked about that one last year.
Oh, yeah. Where was
sounds-
it at?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Chief
Yeah.
administrative constable.
No?
Is there, no, that's fine.
I
I
don't want
was,
chief anywhere in the title.
yeah, I don't love it either, honestly. It's like, what about like executive constable or constable administrator, something? Is there anything about
Constable
disciplinary?
in charge?
Constable in charge.
That's fine.
So when it says like, supervises activities, of personnel, is there anything about disciplinary actions, or is that still gonna be your?
I would have to refer to our, policy manuals, because that would be, so under civil service, disciplinary action is like very sensitive, right? So it would be more that it's like reported. But that person would not be able to terminate anyone. It would be more like,
This is the first line of discipline,
yeah,
not to final
Right.
recourse.
making the recommendations.
Yeah, I
To,
just, like, I'm imagining like somebody creating punishments by like playing around with the schedule or something like that, if they're, you know,
That's a violation of
yeah,
all sorts of other HR laws.
yeah.
Well, right now scheduling is handled by someone else.
Scheduling for the court is handled by one officer, and then scheduling for the patrols is handled by another.
Is there a reason for that?
Just that I talked to them about it, and right, that was what worked for the court scheduling at the time, and because this was pending, like, you know, I haven't really, in terms of like the structure of the department, I haven't really like changed much, but that has been, there's definitely, you know, a need to have more behind the scheduling, you know.
It sounds like we're all fine with it, it's just the name that we're wishy-washy on.
In the military, it would be officer in charge or commanding officer
Yeah, I think
of a division. So
Commanding constable?
Hmm?
Commanding constable?
I think officer in charge.
I would say
Okay.
constable in charge. And
Yeah.
why are these positions civil service?
Because all of our positions are. or almost
I'm
all
trying to
of ours.
remember they were, but they weren't competitive, I think, and then, it became competitive.
But they're different, they're peace officers, not law enforcement.
Right.
So- But when out, they can function as law enforcement if they're on patrol.
I think the job description is fine. I take Alexis's point about the disciplinary thing, but I also understand that the person would not be the final recourse on disciplinary action, and that you as the what do you call it? What do you call yourself? The head of
Department head.
head of
The
department
department
head,
head.
as the department head would be the final arbiter of that. And I think, do we have agreement on hospital charge?
I'm
Fine with
that.
that, yeah.
I'm still in charge.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I do know that there was a strong request for it to be chief, so I think we need to be sensitive to that. So. So, should we, do you guys wanna? Official,
I make a motion for the town of Rochester Town Board to approve the description of constable in charge for job description for civil service as presented and amended, and for the supervisor to distribute and send where it needs to go.
well, to follow up with.
To follow up with the Ulster County Civil Service.
And then do we make an appointment now, or
I
do
need a
we?
second.
No, we can't.
We can't.
Yeah,
till they-
So it hasn't been just,
Yeah.
yeah, so
And I-
is there a second on that? Okay, any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. So I will follow up with civil service, and if they had any additional notes on it, then I'll definitely let you guys know about that, but okay. And then I will refine, I have a draft of that policy, but it was not 100%, but it sounds like for we need to have that policy in place so that the constable in charge can enforce it. So we should definitely do that soon.
Do you want to send a draft of it around?
Yeah, yeah. And then I also want to get input from the department too. Like officially. Okay. The attorney prioritization list, we reviewed that. You guys, I think, thought it was fine with no changes. We talked about templates. I shared that with Mary Lou. She said this looks great. And let's figure out what templates you guys want. So we can work on them. So, I think like big documents and contracts are the two for me right now.
I mean, you're the one who
Yeah,
has the most interactions, so, I mean, I think that we would be well served to have you use your discretion in terms of prioritizing those templates and standardizing those so that we can minimize our risk points and legal expense.
sound good?
Works for me.
Okay. The Town of Rochester Free Exchange Policy Document. Councilman Coleman.
I would like us to just adopt this. I mean, I don't know if people have had a chance to read it, but the staff reviewed it, provided feedback,
And volunteers too.
volunteers provided feedback, and we can amend it if something comes up, but.
I move that we adopt it.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Right, Mary? That's impressive.
I want to say the quickest thing ever, but I know you've been talking about it for a year.
Good.
Okay. Okay, the amplified sound. What we had said, I do think that having some kind of forum or town meeting about this before we move forward with like setting public hearings would be good. I just want to hear from you guys, like, what should the next steps be? What should we get on the calendar? Michael, you had said, oh, it doesn't, we should just do something at a meeting, but I'm feeling like we should do something standalone. But
I think.
sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm getting tired, so I'm.
Totally on the spot. No, I think, look, if we want to have a forum about noise, we should be prepared for it to be a forum about noise. And it's gonna be like people talking about the racetrack, people in favor, people against, people talking about venues, people talking about your neighbors being annoying. So that's a broader discussion. I think it's fine to have that, but I just want to make sure that's not inflated with what was being proposed here, like, because the board was aligned and we're not trying to do a noise ordinance against everything.
Yeah,
So,
and to that point, I'm wondering if we should standardize, like, every time we're going to do something or talk about changing code, that we should contact, at least see if the committees wanna weigh in, because ag wants to make sure that we are not, going after cultural noise, for example, even if everybody like says it's not relevant to us.
I like asking for referral comment if it's a zoning code change.
Yeah.
Like,
But I think-
all committee wise, not just.
But I think we
normal.
should have a pretty clear indication of what the final draft is going to look at, subject to whatever revision and comments we have, but I think amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
We should have an agreed upon draft before we put it out for comment.
yeah, I also, I'm sensitive to the fact that a lot of the issues are with enforcement of existing site plans. And so I do think if we want to consider having people, out assessing noise for site plans, because they're commercial venues that have been called out specifically, and start there before we consider going to the next phase, we can try to do that. If we want to put people on call on weekends and night hours. And have them start trying to monitor
Do
this.
we have a list of those unique noise requirements from special use permits, et cetera?
The code enforcement office does, they gathered all of that information this spring and did the proactive mailing that had those requirements in the letter. It was like a form letter reminding everyone what their approvals were and what their requirements were.
Do we have a copy of those?
I could get that.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
approved
I
the
think
letter,
like-
but I
like any complaint, you're gonna get 80% of your complaints from 10 or 15% of your people. Noisemakers. So it'd be interesting to see how concentrated those complaints are amongst what the scatter diagram would be of those complaints versus the permits.
And there was discussion that you were going to be in contact with the general business community
Yeah.
about this. Is that still in process or?
Yeah, I did like preliminary outreach, but I haven't met with anybody. But
If you need help on any
Yeah.
of that, that's.
Yeah.
I've been out talking to business community for the grant.
Great.
Anyways.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
That would be great. I think it also, one thing that I think if we have an event, we should invite, like, also directly invite the committee, our committees, which I've been trying to do for things, but just make it official, and then invite, make sure that we are reaching out to who we want to come and make sure that they feel that they're able to give input. But do we wanna, I guess I'm like, should we schedule something?
How about, I like the idea of scheduling a forum. I think that the housing forums were one of the nicer ways to get feedback and information from the community, that I've had so far.
And they were so
Changes.
positive,
Yeah, and it was
positively received.
Yes, yeah, not even like, even when it was stuff that some clearly had no idea what we were talking about when it came to like the lower end figures and like different economic backgrounds in town and stuff like that, like that. So it was just a good mix of people. Like I felt like it was just really fruitful and helpful for and the community. Our residents got a chance to, they felt heard, even if they didn't talk, they still felt like they were a part of that discussion. So I think that it was helpful and it can be helpful for this. I also think that this isn't a law that we instantly need to put in effect right now. Like, it's not like we have to pass this by the end of June. So I think taking some time to talk to businesses, get some information, maybe do a forum in like the summer at some point if we wanted to.
Gather our data.
Yeah, exactly. Gather our data first, and then come up with an actual outline that we refer to the different committees for comment and suggestion on, I think would be our most fruitful and like collaborative way for us to do this and make sure that we've kind of hit all those marks. And we also have, we just had a turnover in the code enforcement office, and later tonight, hopefully we'll be appointing a code enforcement officer after later on, but I think that we also need to give a little time for that person to
Enforce what's already on the books.
exactly, yeah, let them get
100%.
settled and enforce it first and kind of see how that first month, like June and July go before we're like, okay, we need to make this super
Slam it
business
down.
heavy in this area, like, for him to have to. Or he or she, whoever we appoint, to have to then pivot around and then now enforce a new one on top of just the special uses we have. That applying to all businesses. I think that seeing if we can get settled with the existing ones for the next month or two. And then while we gather data, I think is the most, I see as the best path forward for us.
Yeah, I'm a little. I'd like to be clear about what our goals are in the noise forum. Because if we want to have a general discussion about noise, it's not gonna be as polite as that.
No,
Oh, no, I know.
Yeah, it's gonna, and if our intent as a board is not to do anything to address noise, then I just want to understand why we're having a forum about noise, because we're gonna hear about agricultural noise, we're gonna hear about chainsaw sculptures, and maybe that bothers some people, and lawnmowers, and these venues. So I don't think this board wants to tackle any of those issues. We don't want to ban the racetrack, we don't want to do any of that. So I agree with Zali, if we want to have it specific to this law, then we should work on the law before we schedule anything. But I
And,
also think we could wait and check out how the enforcement works.
and also in the public discussion, make it very clear that, you know, we're talking about the specific law, not noise issues in general.
So which of those are we proposing that we want to do? Do we want to have something specific to this commercial amplified sound? Or do we want to have like a discussion about noise?
I just think it's gonna happen either way.
But
But at least
as
you
the
could
chair of the
say,
meeting,
yeah.
you can discuss.
Say
you
like,
can
sorry,
right,
standard
Yes, yeah,
parameters.
exactly, yeah, we get.
Say, out of order.
Yeah, we can.
Say we're talking about this
Give certain-
specific thing and not noise in general, although
Right.
we do understand that the issue with noise in general.
I mean, in a town board meeting, I'm comfortable with that, but in a public forum, it's just a lot more difficult to say,
So
know.
let's do it in the town meeting.
no, don't share your opinion. So,
Well, if we make it a special meeting, we can all be there.
I mean, I think I just feel like give the vocal comments we've been getting is the fear of the slippery slope. So if you guys have any ideas of how we can do our best to address that, then like, I think that would be beneficial, because that's the whole.
Yeah.
That,
That opens up.
the conversation.
I mean. I mean, personally, I don't think that the slippery slope argument is a valid thing. I think it's a fear that people have.
Yeah.
And that's a valid fear. But I think that if you're gonna use that as an argument, you say, well, if we wanted to do that, we would do it now. And that's not our intent. And
But that's the argument for
That's up.
having like the law, like at least the language pretty well set, so we'd say it's only applying to X, Y, Z, and
Yes.
whether or not we do something, for example, like making a specific carve out for ag, like at least like we'd have some idea what the language would be.
Which we did in the draft.
Yeah.
We had to carve out for like everything,
Yeah.
basically, even though we even there were still carve outs, even though we specifically were only applying it to amplified
And
sound.
there was still that feedback is what you're saying.
Yeah, so,
I've got a question for you.
yeah,
If you're gonna have a document that's pretty well spells out what you're thinking of on this amplified music,
amplified sound.
do you just go to public hearing or do you have a forum?
Right.
I mean, I think, I do think that it's valuable to have like an inventory of the community ahead of doing something like this. So whether it's a forum or whether we all commit to doing outreach and input gathering to, businesses, farmers, and making sure that our language is, I think it's that. I think it's really important that what we produce is reflective of what the community is.
Could I propose, what if we did a forum, but just for business owners? Because we know how the public feels
Yeah.
about most of these spaces. We've gotten tons of public resident comments, but we don't hear a lot from the actual business owners or the businesses. Unless they have an application open before us that's being reviewed. So what if we did it as the forum is that to see where we might need to tweak this and then do the referral afterwards? I do also think we can wait until our next meeting and all kind of process and digest from this, because I think we all have really good points on where we can kind of choose to steer and go for
Yeah.
the steps of this.
That might be one good way of actually addressing this is to have non-public meeting, forums that we're inviting, like, okay, cause I don't know if you remember, but I did a farmer only forum
Yes.
on zoning, and that was and then we could do
Yeah, where we invite the farm owners, we invite like any of the local business owners that would.
Yeah, so we
that
just do
have-
separate kind of targeted and have a more like a roundtable discussion.
Less antagonistic posture.
Yeah, so that you're not bringing,
Yes, like tell us your concerns with
Yeah.
this, like let us know what you're
Yeah, like,
feeling,
what
like
is-
we wanna know how this would impact you in your business. so
Yeah,
that
and then
can
we
get
can-
educated.
There could be like a report of that feedback
Mhm.
that goes into consideration.
Yeah, cause I think the public, we have a public hearing method to hear from the public, hear from residents during every step of changing these zoning codes. So I think if we did do it the reverse way, that it might. It would be more helpful, and I think it might be perceived better, especially if it's one where we stream it and we do it. Like we've done other ones where. The public can watch and see what these opinions were and how this affects their neighbors that own these businesses too at times, you know?
Okay, so how far out?
Just remember, if you do it with a quorum, the public can come. Because then it's,
Yeah.
you have to comply with open meetings. So if you want to have, maybe you want to have one with business people with two of you, one with farmers, agricultural people with two. You might want to look at it that way.
Oh, yeah, they can all be welcome, but it's like if we target invites.
Yeah.
We should send it to those.
Yeah, I'm also happy to have it be split up so that they're just their events, not meetings. And then I think if we were to do that, we could schedule those out, and then it would be really cool if we then presented that information to the public.
Mhm.
We could,
For the public, yeah.
yeah, this
Yes.
is like what we
Yeah.
heard, these are the things that we're putting in, this is how we're trying to address that concern. And like, I would feel pretty good about that.
So step one is compiling a list of who we want to reach out to.
And then,
Yeah, and then we can ponder for
Yeah.
one we wanted to, like.
I have some ideas already, so,
Okay.
great.
So I also. I don't want to lose sight on what brought us here, which is like we're coming into the summer season. And I think a lot of the places that people have raised issues about have site plans, so I think we just need to also make sure that we're trying to fix the enforcement stuff.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think at next meeting, which is June, we can come back and we maybe have an idea of stakeholders that we think we should invite to those forums and start to get an idea, schedule them for like later summer.
Yeah.
I
But
agree. I think
separate, they're separate.
They're separate
things.
things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that and supporting code enforcement and making sure we get that with a turnover settled, that department is.
Yeah.
That's the first step for the noise.
And it doesn't feel like summer.
Mm-hmm.
It will be 70.
My pool's open. Nothing.
Are you skating on it?
No, I mean, it's heated. It's all it's doing is making my backyard look ominous. At night,
Yeah,
it's
so good.
just jumped out across my whole yard.
Okay, do you wanna do the training, or should I talk about the time policy that I wanted to ask you guys about?
How can I do training? Look, there's not a lot of training.
Okay,
Do you want me to join the Zoom and share?
you could do
Sure.
that. I did do a check-in at our last meeting, like, do you really wanna do
Wait,
it
I
in a
already
meeting? And you said yes.
Didn't you show me this?
I did.
I did it. We did them. Okay, can I go check in with my babysitter when you show everyone else? Yes.
How do I join the Zoom?
You can go to the agenda.
Oh, is it?
All right,
Hold it, Julie. About.
Erin,
Yeah,
sorry. I would love to stay with you all night. I don't know if there's anything else on the agenda you need me for.
yeah, I was trying to think about whether I want you in our executive session.
Okay, I can hang out.
I'm thinking.
Why don't,
I'm just trying
Um,
to save you money, but if you want to keep paying me, I have no objection.
why don't we just go through the SharePoint stuff after we do the executive session? It's gonna take like 2 minutes.
We can do that. You mean in the public portion?
Yeah, we can exit executive session in the first 2 minutes. Right? We don't have to restream.
So skip forward to executive session now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we can not do the training because there's not a lot of training.
Okay, so the thing I wanted to ask you guys about, I'm trying to find it. I'm like, embarrassed that I didn't. So we have, my understanding is we have a policy that with people that have paid time off, they get paid time off. The town board actually has to approve them taking additional time off if they've used up their pay, but
You have to prove them to take unpaid leave.
Is that paid or unpaid?
unpaid. So I'm trying to find it because I remember reading that, and this is something that's been sticking in my head.
I mean, if that's the policy, we should remove that and we should be able to.
So I wanted to ask you guys about it because I do have like a request to take some time off by someone who they don't have quite enough vacation. The issue is this, like, I guess, well, I can always deny it if I'm like, no, you can't keep taking it. I just wanted to check in with you guys about that idea and like the creep and like making sure that people are coming to work. And see what you thought about that. That's kind of what I wanted, but now we don't have everyone on the table, so.
I think that the supervisor should have the ability to authorize unpaid leave. Or what?
I bet you said it's fine. SharePoint still?
No, we're not gonna do SharePoint ever. Erin said that we have a policy.
I think.
She thinks we have a policy where people can be authorized if they run out of PTO to take unpaid leave, but it has to be authorized by the town board. Is asking if that's necessary, I think, or
Think that we can delegate Erin to use her supervisory
I agree.
Budgetary.
and executive authority to make those decisions.
Yes. Yeah, if somebody needs to take time off and the board can't give me for 2 weeks, I think.
But also, what do you guys think about that policy?
I think,
Go ahead. Mary.
I do remember very vaguely when that policy was put in and there was a reason for it. And it was long ago and I can't remember if
The
people
reason,
were just allowed, right, if people were allowed and you had departments that didn't have enough people because people were just saying, it's okay, I don't have vacation, but I'll just
Yeah.
take it unpaid. Kate, do you remember, or was it?
the reason
even-
would be either the supervisor wasn't around to make those decisions, or employees were abusing it.
Right,
But also the supervisors would be abusing it because,
I'm sorry, are
They'd
you
be-
talking about the town supervisor or the department supervisor?
well, right now, the department supervisors approve time off. But, and I'm trying to find it, it's driving me bonkers, but I thought I read there somewhere where full-time employees, you know, that people that have, because people who don't get paid leave credits are authorized to take time off with their
Direct
good,
report.
with
the
with
supervisor.
approval. But if you have time off, you're supposed to be taking time off that matches what you've gotten. Now, there are like exceptions, like you can't, like in the first 6 months, you can't use vacation time. So part of that is like, you shouldn't be taking any time off, right? So, but what if someone is sick and they don't have enough leave credits? Well, I'm not gonna make someone come to work or penalize them because they don't have sick credits. So there's things like that but I just wanted to get you guys's, because to me, I understand like that to me, it's like, there's like a little bit of a buffer that I'm okay with. But there's like another
If
part
it's-
where I'm like, no.
But if it gets abused, I mean, I would think that the department heads are running their departments and they would know how to manage it. And when they don't, that's when you as town supervisor would step in and say, there's a problem here. But I think that I don't think that you or the town board should be micromanaging all of that. I mean, I think we should be all vigilant about abuses, but I don't think we add any value by approving somebody taking 4 extra hours off. It's a waste of.
To round
it's a
out
waste of dollars, yeah.
their days off.
Vacation.
Yeah, because that's what the issue is here, is like rounding it to a third day. But I wanted to get your take because for me, I don't want to have something, that what I'm aware of happening is doing something for someone that you then don't do for someone else, right? So like, I like black and white policies for that reason. And so I think that's for me, I'm like, for me, it's like it's like a little percentage on the edges is okay, but like beyond that, it's a no. But that's how I am. Someone else in my position might not be that way. But I also can't find the policy.
And it's also the department managers manage their departments.
Yeah, no, yeah,
It's like, and if somebody in one department says, look, somebody said I could take an extra day off, and somebody in another department says, no, my boss said I can't, then it's the luck of the draw. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing.
I mean, if it's unpaid, it's unpaid too.
Yeah.
You know,
But if it is an actual policy, which I think it is, Aaron, you guys have to vote to change that policy, so.
or leave the policy in place, and since we designate in the organizational meeting that Erin as supervisor can manage these things, unless the board's gonna hold her to that policy.
Right, but if the policy says it's a town board policy, it means you
I
can't
take an oath
designate
of
it.
office. I take an oath
We all take a note there.
to follow. What? I'm serious.
But we're in a public
take a note
meeting
that the
now
Constitution
saying that
matters,
we're
so
okay
no.
with you exercising discretion.
That's what the principle is. When you find the actual policy, we can amend it.
Yes.
Okay,
But I think nobody here objects to you making discretionary or that department heads not exercise their discretion and allowing people to take unpaid time off, provided that their
right,
duties are covered and performed.
right. Okay, and then the other fun thing is that we're now almost completely doing the ADP time and attendance, which is the digital time cards, which is a totally new thing. And the supervisory employees and department heads can now see the time off accruals for their employees, which was not something that was all just held in a filing cabinet in the supervisor's office before. So that was one thing that was really hard for me. I was like, they can't actually approve this with the time off. They're just like approving it with the scheduling. And so now there's like a little bit more. So it's nice to have be giving more supervisory power to the supervisors. Yeah.
I don't define that as fun, but I'm very happy.
Oh.
Delegating is very.
I think, well, it
Well,
feels
it's not fun for me. I don't have
feels
access.
good, and I've been enjoying working with our management team to get that going, so. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now, we're gonna go into executive session.
A motion to enter executive.
Can we add, and discipline?
Enters into executive session at 9:23 PM for the purposes of discussions of matters leading to the discipline and employment of particular persons.
There's a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, so we're gonna stop the stream.